gone, the thrill is gone away. The thrill is gone, the thrill is gone away. You know you've done me wrong, and you'll be sorry someday.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Thanks for coming. One of the great pleasures of an academic career is occasionally getting to introduce old friends. This has happened to be more than once at Unity College. This is my old buddy, Whalley, formerly of RAF Kinloss, RAF Leuchars Mountain Rescue Teams. Heavy has spent a lifetime in the mountains doing rescue, doing search and rescue. You'd be very surprised, I would think, to listen to some of his ideas and opinions. The Royal Air Force Mountain Rescue Service is probably the most eccentric and strange and unique of all of the military special forces that exist in the world. You've never seen anything like this in your life. The Royal Air Force Mountain Rescue Service does a combination of what the Park Service, the National Park Service Rangers, game wardens, civilian search and rescue teams, and US Air Force Air Rescue does in this country. We don't do any single one thing quite the same as any single one US service does it. So what it is really a civilian doctrine mountain rescue service that works as part of the standing military. And Heavy's going to explain how it works, but he's also going to show you an awful lot of really good pictures, a lot of wonderful mountain scenery. Most Americans don't quite understand what a radically mountainous country the British Isles is, but especially the northern British Isles and Scotland. I'm very proud to have Heavy here to come talk. He was one of the people that I looked up to when I was in the service, and he used to walk me into the ground. He was very good at walking people into the ground. So all of the students that took Intro to Con Law with me and went out climbing Mount Harris and navigating around in the countryside, this is the guy I learned it from. So I hope you give a very good welcome, a good Unity College welcome to Heavy Whalley.
Thank you. I hope you can understand what I'm saying, because if you don't, for goodness sake, come up to me and somebody say, I can't understand the word, because I'm from a place called Scotland, which is a wonderful little country, and I'm very proud of being Scottish, hence the jacket. I was going to wear a kilt, but Scotsmen are very tight with money, which means they don't spend much, so it's a lot cheaper to buy a wee bit of tartan and everything. So this is just a brief resume on what I've been up to in my life. And you know, as Mick said, quite embarrassingly, you know, what I've been doing. But I just left the RAF, Royal Air Force, and I've spent 37 years, fantastic life in the military. But I hope, and everybody's got a different idea of the military, especially nowadays with what's going on in this crazy mad world. And now I can speak very openly about how I feel about the mountains, the environment, people, and what's going on in the world. So being in the military and working a lot with civilians, you know, the other side, and working in disasters like Lockerbie, you might have heard of things like that. I was very involved in things. I've got a completely different attitude from most military people you meet. That's the standard thing, the standard photo that I show. Our helicopters, RAF rescue helicopters, are bright yellow and they're wonderful in the mountains. They're very old and a seeking helicopter. But really, when mountain rescue comes into it, and no matter how technical we get in this world, when the weather's poor or awful, helicopters can't do it. The only thing that's going to matter in the world is your little team and your guys. I've been on over 1,000 rescues in my time. I've probably been to, not counting aircraft fatalities, over 300 mountaineers killed in that time. Hellish thing when you think 10 people every year. I've been to nearly 100 aircraft crashes, and that was my speciality, unfortunately. So it's quite an interesting story, but it's got to start at the beginning. And I was very lucky because can you understand what I'm saying? Yeah. Are we okay? Right, as long as that. Have you ever had a Billy Connolly? Yes. I'm not like this, but I'm very lucky because I was a member of a family. I had 5 children. My father was a Church of Scotland minister in Ayrshire, near a place where Robbie Burns, you might have heard of him, a famous poet in the world. And if you ever want to read about people and and how to treat people, read Robbie Burns. It's amazing, educational. But that's how we went on the hills, mountaineering. My dad and my sisters and my brother. And that's my dad in the white top there, dressed for the mountains. Look at him. He's got his shirt on, he's got his walking stick, and he's got a jumper. He went out summer and winter and that. And I was very lucky because I'd done what you call a paper round and bought myself a jacket, and I was chuffed. This is my mother on her honeymoon in 1936. And my dad took her on a honeymoon round the mountains in Scotland. So I was very lucky. My family took me out into the mountains from a very early age. And that's where I got my love of the mountains. So I've got a lot to thank them from. I joined the RAF when I was 17, and my nickname is Heavy. And I was called Heavy because I was 7 stone. I was a skinny. I'm quite fat now. I apologise for that, but you can't say that nowadays. But I'm quite well built now. But I found it very hard when I joined because they wouldn't accept me because I was the skinniest little runt of the litter, if you understand what I'm saying here. And these guys were all massive, big mountaineers, big hairy guys. We've got girls now as well, even some hairy girls. But and they gave me a hard time because I was so thin. So I had quite a hard time joining. But once I joined the RAF, I only wanted to be a mountaineer and I only wanted to join the mountain rescue. The mission, and this all sounds really posh, doesn't it? But we take anybody from, again, I was quite lucky because I'd done a bit of mountaineering, but we would take guys from the street, straight in to join the military, who are usually fairly fit because they're in the military, with no experience, and then we give them what we call a 3-week trial, and we will train them and see how they do in that 3 weeks. And all we want to see that they are a good team member, they get on with people, they're not super fit, but they try and work hard. So all these things I was learning as a young lad is what we did, and we did it pretty formally. But our job in the RAF, why is the RAF get a mountain rescue? And our thing is, because we're there to rescue people from crashed aircraft. And during the Second World War, they reckon they lost more people training, probably in America as well as in the UK, because they trained everybody for the war, a lot of them in the UK, and they lost more people, believe it or not, training, crashing into mountains and surviving the crashes, but nobody could get them off. Hence, this is why we're an RAF Mountain Rescue. So our first job is crashed aircraft. Our next thing is the rescue of civilian hikers and walkers and climbers. And the third thing is civil emergencies. And that can go from flooding to train crashes to anything. But to do that, as I said there, to do that, you've got to do various things. This is just a wee history. It was formed in '43 during the war. And some of you might have heard of the Burma Hump. We actually gave, with what we were doing in the early days, we actually guys parachuting into rescues in Borneo and places like that. So a lot of the American para-rescue stuff is based on stuff we did. And we did loads of things through to 1976. We did expedition to Turkey and Iran, training with Americans and special forces all over the world. And we had teams in Aden, Madeira, Hong Kong, all over the world, Cyprus and Turkey. And in UK we had 6 teams. In 1990 things changed, and now they've got 4 teams. And there's never more than 120 people. So it's a very specialised outfit. In my 37 years, and I was a team leader for 15, no fewer of these guys than 20 became special forces. That's quite a lot. And these were just people like you and I, not superhuman, but in the end, from the training they got, they ended up becoming special forces. So it's quite amazing. This is where the teams are, probably, UK, but we're spread all over the place. Very quickly, there's 2 teams for Scotland because it's such a mountainous area. Most of the mountains in Britain are in Scotland, and that's our job. We cover that. And England and Wales is covered by Leaming and Valley. Sorry, Valley and Leaming, yeah. And if we get a big job, we'll work together. At Lockerbie, which you'll hear about, there was 4 teams working together. So anything big, we'll all work together and go on with it. But we train guys from people who've never been in a mountain, never seen a rope. And remember, this is not training, because in that first week, they could actually be in a rescue, because we do maybe 50 rescues a year, so that's near enough 1 a week. And sometimes you're put straight into it, because it happens when you're walking around the hill. So we have to train them, and we have a thorough training, because you can't do anything in this life without training. And the first thing we want them to be is good mountaineers, and that takes years. I mean, I'm learning, every day you go out as a mountaineer, you learn. We teach them to rock climb, we teach them stretcher loading and litter handling and rope work. A huge thing is navigation, because you've got to learn to navigate. Again, most of our incidents that we're called for are in very poor weather, and if you can't handle navigation, and GPSs and things are no use without knowing how to basic navigation. We teach the guys survival, good communications, being able to talk, not just to each other, but also to learn when you're on a big rescue that you don't need to be talking all the time. So it's important radio procedure. And a huge thing, some of you might have worked with helicopters, that's a frightening thing when a helicopter comes into an incident. Big noisy things, you've got to keep your team together, and very, very dangerous. Every team has about 6 paramedics now, and they can give all kinds of life-saving skills. They give analgesics, use splints, oxygen. But a lot of the times we're very restricted to what we can do. And when we're out on it, we're talking sometimes we have got to get them, bag and pack them straight off as quick as possible, because if we don't, the weather will get them. So sometimes you have to make big decisions. And we do a lot of search management. We are the experts really in search management because we have people who are paid full time to do it, and controlled systems. And there's so many things that, you know, I could spend the whole day talking about it. But this is even things we do up there. That's a wagon, sorry, that was a wagon up there, going in a Hercules. So we do stuff like that. We're transportable for any incident we can do. But you've got to train for everything. Everybody is basic first aid. And we're talking pretty advanced basic. It's a 3D course. But there's nothing worse, because if you're in a big search in bad weather, you find a casualty and you don't know what you're doing. So, and these are great skills for life as well, aren't they? Because how many times, you know, you will use the skills you learn in basic first aid. And we're not talking doctor skills, we're talking keeping somebody very simply alive by clearing the airway and you know, doing bits and pieces, to the advanced stuff of putting needles in people and all that kind of stuff. We have a huge history because we haven't always been great, and I say we are very good nowadays, but we had an incident in the 1950s where an aircraft crashed into this beautiful big mountain, and this is, heard somebody say, the Three Sisters. It's called the triple buttresses, these, and there's huge buttresses 1,500 feet high, and an aircraft crashed into this in 1950, and it took 3 months in the end to get the casualties down. But it took 3 days before the search started because they didn't even know where to look, and that's a little country like Scotland. Unfortunately, all the casualties were killed, but when the guys got there, they couldn't climb the snow and ice, they didn't know how to do it, they didn't have the kit. Because they'd got, and I hate to say it, lazy, they weren't going out training, and you can't be like that. If you're a rescue team, you've got to train, you've got to learn your skills, and they were caught sharpish for this. And it's a very serious place. This is a gully here, which, you know, it's 1,000 feet high, and this is where the aircraft crashed. And even nowadays, it's a very steep and serious place. This is an aerial view of it. If there'd been helicopters these days, it might have been easier. But again, the weather was no good, so for a week, no helicopter would get near it. And this is a huge, huge, massive mountain. Even my last day in the mountain, in the RAF, was spent in this hill. And this is a photo. This is a wheel over 50 years old, still there at the bottom of the gully. So there's loads of bits and pieces there. And this is me actually climbing the route where these casualties were. And this is quite serious ground. And you can imagine in the 1950s, these people didn't even have crampons. They cut steps the way up it, and they had one axe, not the modern technology they've got nowadays. So even today, with all the modern skills, it's still quite a serious proposition. And if you imagine trying to locate and bring casualties off there, amazing. And every year we go up, usually, hopefully, and leave a wee wreath to the people who died, because Scotland is covered in aircraft crashes. And because we're RAF, we always remember the people who died, and we do a wee wreath, and that's one of our, it's actually a Navy helicopter in the background there. It dropped us off on the summit, and that's the boys leaving a wee memorial. Things were going through quite a bad time in the 50s for mountain rescue. What we did was, because we got guys in who were mountaineers, and the guy with the red beret is a very famous mountaineer called Johnny Lees, and he was one of the first guides, fully qualified mountain guides in Britain. And he came and took over and got everybody mountaineering, because again, you can't be a mountain rescuer or a searcher unless you're skilled. You can't just put this jacket on and do it. So he took the whole system back to the beginning and taught very basics. The other guy's another famous guy called John Hyde. And in these days, they climbed just with a rope, no gear, and the secret was the leader didn't fall. It's quite amazing, the stuff they did. Nowadays, it's a wee bit different. I was also very lucky because I spent the last 4 years working in a place called it's quite a hard word to say, the ARCC, and it's the Aeronautical Rescue Coordination Centre. And that was a place in Scotland which controlled the whole of UK, over 1 million square miles, right out the pond, right across the Atlantic. And we not only covered any rescues there that needed it, but we also covered ship satellite beacons, aircraft having problems, and we worked very closely with all the countries in the world. And that was a great job. I was in there as a mountain rescue and aircraft expert. We were working with sinking ships. We were picking beacons up because we're one of the only tracking station in UK. We could pick beacons up in Antarctica in weather when people having problems out there, yachts out at sea. So that was fantastic. And one great thing about search and rescue, there's no politics in it. Everybody works together. You know, we never have a problem, and if somebody had a problem in the world, everybody helps, and that's quite unique. And I found that a really fulfilling job, and it was a very interesting job. And this is where we worked quite hard when you're a bit of a not that computer illiterate like I am, but you're working with 3 screens and you're working the whole UK, and you know you're sending helicopters out and you've got 15 minutes to do it. All our helicopters during the day are on 15 minutes readiness, and at night they're on an hour. And on a Saturday we would maybe do 40 incidents, and that could do with an aircraft crash, to a boat sinking, to somebody away out in the Atlantic, to moving a baby's heart. And my last day in the RAF, when I was on shift, we actually moved a baby who was dying up to London and saved her life. So every day is a different day in that place, and it was a fantastic finish to my life in the RAF. But anyway, and that just shows you the area we covered, right out to sea, and Canada and America and Iceland. We all work together. If there's a boat in the middle, we all work together to see what asset works. And it's amazing seeing the countries of the world. Isn't that the way the place should be? Isn't it? Everybody working together to try and help. And I was very lucky to do that job. I also, for my sins, went to a place called Lockerbie. And a lot of people don't even know it's 20 years this Christmas when Lockerbie happened. And remember I said at the beginning I'd been to 100 aircraft crashes. This was the worst thing I'd ever seen in my life. And it was majority were Americans. And it was right before Christmas. And I couldn't believe the call when I got it. And I ended up being the senior team leader there. But you can't imagine a jumbo jet crashing over a town, not even as big as Unity. And imagine a jumbo jet landing here. The whole crew were killed, and only 11 of the locals were killed, which is 11 too many. But maybe 290 people killed all in. And we were there for 3 days, and you would not believe that horror. And Christmas, if you can imagine, it's your worst scenario, isn't it? You know, an aircraft, and it was killed, it was done by terrorism, we knew straight away there was a major problem. So not only did a major search, but you also had a criminal aspect to it, which brings another thing. But if you can imagine it happening anywhere, this is the worst place in Britain because it's a very small place, there is very little infrastructure, and the police force is the smallest one in Britain. So we were straight in there within an hour of it happening. And that tells you there what happens. It's only, because I was quite very affected by it, and I'll talk about that in a minute, but it's only when you go up to the Garden of Remembrance and you see all these names on there of all these families, and lots of them were students coming home for Christmas. And man's humanity to man, you cannot believe. And I'd seen most things in my life, but that thing really incredible. To see the front of a jumbo jet lying in a playing field, you just cannot believe. And this is a crater of a wing right next to houses, you know, and all these houses are gone. How only 11 died from the town, I do not know. Can you imagine a search area of 1,500 kilometres? Can you imagine searching for 200 people in that? And this was a massive search. Can you imagine in a little, that's a map, kilometre square, that's about a 2-mile circle, 145 fatalities in that area. How would you cope with that? And you're talking children, kids, add with it Christmas presents all over the place. Terrible. But somebody's got to do it. And you know, people say, oh, things like that, but the services are ready. Nobody is ready for something like that. And people, and I've been to quite a few disasters, trust me, I've seen quite a few in my time. But no matter how well you train for it, it's always going to happen in a different way. The first thing that happened was there was no communications. People couldn't talk to each other. All the cell phones went down. All the road, that is the main road, like one of our motorways. That was the whole road to Scotland and England blocked immediately because there was wreckage and people lying on the motorway. So the worst scenario in the world could happen. And another thing in a disaster, everybody throws assets, and what I mean is helicopters, ambulances come in, and become gridlock. We had 15 helicopters there within an hour, and it was like Vietnam. It really was, and there was more chance of an aircraft accident, and that was one of the things we had to do straight away because the whole place was on fire. It was so dangerous, and in the first 2 hours, I had guys who'd seen most things in Scotland, but I had to say, you can't go out, you can't do anything. You've got to let the fires go down. So your first thing in any incident, when you get there, is actually your risk and your safety, and taking controls. Again, nobody had ever seen this kind of trauma and this kind of thing happen. A terrible thing. And I could talk about Lockerbie, and I'll answer any questions, but I still find it very hard. What we did, and this is a thing, if you ever deal with any major trauma, if you don't need to be there, don't be there. You know, and that's a huge thing in life. And if you ever have to do it, make sure you've got somebody with you. We always have what we call a buddy-buddy system. If there's anything really bad happens, or we're searching, we're always in twos, because then you've got somebody to feed off if it all goes wrong. And the team's got huge out of this. This was Maggie Thatcher, you might have heard of her for other faults, but we did this. But the whole thing about after this was, I was working for about a week doing reports, because trying to improve the system after what happened. But it's a thing that will live in my life for many, many years. 3 weeks later, there's a place called Kegworth. You probably haven't heard of this. This just missed the motorway. This is just off the motorway down south. And I wasn't on this, but two of the mountain rescue teams on this helped the firemen get 45 people out of that. Whereas at Lockerbie we didn't save anybody. At Kegworth we did. And that's amazing. Things don't happen twice. Yes, they do. So after your incident and after your call out, you've got to be ready for your next one, because in this game, you're only as good as your next day. There's no resting on laurels. And the guys were out and they did a fantastic thing here, because with the mountaineering skills you've got and the stretchers that split up, or the litters as you call them, you can get into things like this and get casualties out. And that was amazing. You can see we'd even tied the aircraft because it was moving. So, terrible thing though it was, without a doubt, the stuff we learned at Lockerbie was put straight into this. My life is quite a disaster. You've heard of Chinook aircraft? This is a Chinook on fire. Look at the picture here. Again, we were in this within an hour. This was coming from Ireland in 94. This crashed in Milliken Tyre, and there was 29 fatalities on it. All special forces, including Americans in this. And I took that photo. It's not very good, but can you see that it's still on fire? And this is a crash scene. And again, there's nothing we could do, but we had to secure the site, check everybody. Unfortunately, there's no life in them, and then keep everybody else out of it. But we had a padre, a minister, came up during the night wanting to bless the thing, and we were mounting crash guard, because every aircraft incident is an actual. There's got to be an inquiry, and you can't move people, because of what happens is they want to know what happened to the aircraft, so people can't be moved. So it's all evidence. And the padre came up, and I said, look, you don't really want to be here. Remember what I said to you? You don't need to be there. Don't be there. And this guy ended up with a nervous breakdown. He could never work again for what he'd seen. And yet these people wouldn't listen. So, I mean, another terrible tragedy, but it's quite amazing. But we don't only do our own aircraft. We do American aircraft that unfortunately crashed in the UK. And you might have heard of the Cairngorm Mountains, and this was a huge search for 3 days, you know. Huge big aircraft, two of them, two F-15s, crashed in the Cairngorm Mountains. They hit each other. And you can't believe in a little country like Britain, two modern aircraft with all the technology, we couldn't find them for 3 days. But not only have you, and this is the Cairngorms, it probably means very little to you, but it's a very, very big and hard place. The plateau is over 4,000 feet, and that's what makes Scotland so unique. It's Arctic. I've climbed in Alaska, I've been in 40 expeditions all over the world. Scotland's one of the worst places because the weather comes in very quickly. Like here, you can get really bad weather because you're so near the sea. And this plateau is over 4,000 feet, and the aircraft crashed right in the middle in here, and then it took 3 days to find this. And the conditions we were working in were horrendous. And this is us searching for the casualties. This is avalanche probing. But this doesn't come automatic because we couldn't fly in. You can see the conditions. You have to walk in, and you're talking 5 hours walk in, 5 hours maybe walk out, and a couple of hours searching. There's no way you can get in helicopters in conditions like this. And you're talking really strong winds, so you've got to be fit, strong, and know what you're doing. And you've also got to be very controlled when you're doing a search of this. Because if you miss the casualty, it's a waste of time. And then you've got a huge environmental thing, aircraft in the mountains. Can you imagine the environmental impact? And the Cairngorms is a fantastic. It's all an area of national beauty and scientific interest. So this had to be cleaned, and they spent months cleaning this up. So in the end, there's been absolutely no damage done at all. But again, that's a big thing that we get involved in. And they took everything away, and the place was left as perfect as it can be. All these tragedies, but life is good and life is fun. And you know, I had a dog that went round all these hills in Scotland and loved it. Mick will remember him. Enjoyed chewing beer cans, and get a dog, they're really good. He did some mountaineering, this dog. I hope there's no pet lovers here, but he enjoyed every minute of this. But the joy of this slide is this is a guy doing a mountain in Scotland called the Inpin, which is an inaccessible pinnacle. It's in a magnificent place called Skye. And if you ever visit God's country, go and visit Skye. What a place. The whiskey's lovely, I know none of you drink, but it's a lovely place. There's a little beasties there called midges, like your mosquitoes, trust me, they're worse. But the mountains are magnificent, and if you ever get a chance, go across there. But one thing about being a mountaineer, and this is one thing you have to say, or being a searcher, you've got to adapt to whatever's happening. Now, the only way we could get the dog up here was a different way of adapting, but that's what life's like as well. You know, and he loved it, I think. Mountain rescue has a huge history in Britain, and that's how things used to happen in the 30s and 40s. The policeman there with his hat on, rescuing somebody out of a river with a couple of old ropes. And that's how things happen in areas. And you can only make the best of the people you've got. And Scotland is not a highly populated place. So a lot of the teams are not made up of huge, great mountaineers. They're made up of people who work the land, the policeman, the farmer, the keeper, the gillie, and they all work together as a team. And this is a good example of teamwork with somebody out of a river. This is one of the first incidents in Scotland in 1934. And they must have been hard there because this guy has broke his femur, which is a huge injury if any of you know anything about it. And yet he's still smiling because they never cried in the 1930s. And this is a bed out at the CIC up, they've made it a stretcher. But look at the war in the hills there. Look at it. Trench coats, shorts, they're always wearing shorts for some reason. And hats. Hard nails. Hard as nails. But it just shows you don't need all the equipment to go out and enjoy the mountains or go for a walk, do you? It's one of the cheapest things you can ever do. You know, go out and enjoy and see what's going on. We have, the Scottish Mountain Rescue, I've told you, we've got mountain rescue posts all over the place. The part I was involved with was the Mountain Rescue, the RAF. We also had the Search and Rescue Dog Association. And if you love animals, one of the best things you could ever have is a search and rescue dog. Because they will find people, they're amazing bits of kit. Better than helicopters, better than anything. And we do lots of searches nowadays for what we call in Britain vulnerable people. People with Alzheimer's, and as the generations are getting older, we do lots of searches, not just mountaineering, for people like this. And dogs are amazing for finding people. And our success rate in rescuing and finding old people is incredible, as long as you're in there quickly. But to do it, you've got to practice all your skills. And you've got to make the best of what people are there. And when you're searching an area, it's well worth talking to the local guys. This is an island called Rum, which is another area of Scotland, a little island off Skye. And this is the local guys helping us on a rescue we did. And this is a famous island because it's protected. And there's a bird there called the Manx shearwater, which lives high up in the hill, 2,500 feet. The only thing is, it nests and burrows up there. And all the twitchers are bird watchers, same word there. They all go up there to watch these things. And at night they come in, like 30,000 of them come in at night to the nest. And it's amazing, amazing to see them. Unfortunately, birds nest all over a mountain. It means you get loads of slippy poo, or whatever you want to call it. And every year, one of these poor bird watchers takes a fall in this place. So this is a normal occurrence for us to go out and rescue the bird watchers. But we usually have a good, usually it's not bad, it's a broken ankle. But these are remote places and there's no roads or anything. So again, you'll be carrying a stretcher. Have any of you carried stretchers? Is it the hardest thing you'll ever do? It is a nightmare. Some of our stretcher carries 10 hours. Trust me, if you only get 6 people, it is impossible. So you get everybody in, you can do it, and off you go. Some of the training is fantastic though, you know. And if you get a flight in a helicopter like this round Skye, that's what we do with our young guys. They love it, not really, it's terrifying. But you know, getting winched round Skye in a helicopter like that is incredible. But lots of times, if we have an incident, we send a fast party by helicopter and we go straight into it. That's why we're there on scene before most people. But most of our stuff is basic. In the mountains, it's searching ground like this, which is Skye, hard, rocky, tricky, and you've got to train for that. You can't go into that environment without doing it. You can't say, I'll miss the training and not go out. You've got to be fit, because the last thing you want is to have an accident here, and it is so easy to have an accident. And in our history of nearly 60 years, we've only one fatality, which is fantastic, considering the conditions we've got in. But it's only because we really train, and we train hard to search places like that. You know, and it's not, what we pride ourselves in being an all-weather search and rescue. Not a good day climbing group or whatever, we're all-weather, which means, and somebody asked me, I did a thing today for one of the local TV things, what's the worst weather you've ever been out on, and is there any time you've never managed not to go? And usually, we will get a couple of guys out to, we'll get guys up there, whatever the weather is, because that's the way we train the guys. At great risk at times. But you've got to train, we use pyrotechnics, which is flares, and you can't just pick these things out of the bag, you've got to use them, you've got to train. So there's so many skills that you learn from talking to people, you know, to the first aid, to communication, to handling things like this. And it's amazing how you get these kids who join, and that's a great thing I find about it. An old guy like me can still go out with all young kids in their great days, and I've been lucky because they still want to go out with me for some reason. It's great, I want them to go out, because they're fit and strong and carry my rope. But it's amazing, and you watch these kids join. For me, a young kid, and next minute they're a mover, and as you'll find out, they get to the summit of Everest maybe. We get some unusual ones. This is one of our helicopters in a rescue, seeking. It was stuck in this beautiful quarry at 3,000 feet for a week because it iced up. So we had a crash guard in there, which was quite, you know, watching the helicopter, quite amazing. And that was lovely because you're getting weather like this, but everyone was frozen up and couldn't get it out. So you can do some amazing things. But this is the hard thing is, this is what we do, and we do well, getting somebody out off the hill. And see, the guys are all wearing crampons on their feet here. This is an art, you know, walking down paths, carrying somebody. This was actually one of my bosses we took out for an introduction to mountaineering, and she fell, just tripped over and broke her ankle. So I wasn't very popular, but it happens. And she was sitting crying because she broke her ankle, lying in this storm. And you know, she says, I want a helicopter. There's no way a helicopter would come in that day. You see, all the guys, you won't be anywhere in Scotland without doubles. That's how bad the weather is. You know, in Scotland regularly, there's no way the chopper will fly. So she got the unique experience of getting carried out by herself. But it's a good learning thing. And there's no mechanical way of doing this. It's just hard, bloody work, and you have to do it. And practice, you go and do that, it's a nightmare. I was very lucky to go to Everest. Now, probably you've all heard the Everest thing and blah, 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 but if you're a mountaineer, you do want to go to Everest. And it's a wonderful thing. And I was very lucky. I went as a, what you call a base camp manager. And, you know, I was in a place called the Falklands working, and it took 3 years to organise this expedition. It was purely made up of guys from Mountain Rescue. So 120 days, we chose 12 guys to go to Everest. And it was quite hard to get it. But this was email just starting, and imagine, you know, I organised the whole thing, even picking up yaks in Tibet from the Falklands Islands. It's just incredible the way things have moved on. But Everest you would not believe, and to go from, I'd been to the Himalayas, I've done 5 expeditions to the Himalayas, I'd seen Everest from the other side, but I'd never been to Tibet, and what a country, and Tibet's in the news, isn't it? Incredible. And to see this beast of a mountain, and it is a beast, it's just incredible. But out there we did 3 rescues, and it's bad enough carrying a stretcher at sea level, we're at 3,000 feet, this is at 21,500 feet. This is the height of Mount McKinley. If any of you ever get a chance to climb Alaska or McKinley, what a great mountain. But you think when you're up there, you're pretty tired, you try carrying somebody off. So when you have a problem up there, it is serious. And again, we didn't have many of us. And this guy just died, nearly died. But again, when you're out there, you've only got so much oxygen. And if you've taken only a dozen bottles with you, and if you use 4 to save this guy's life, if one of your guys has a problem later on, you can't replenish it. So you have a real hard decision. What do we do here? Now, we're good people. Half the other expeditions walk by this guy. And that's not what mountaineering or being in the mountains is about, is it? But that's what people will like. They get a thing called summit fever, they're not interested. And to do this at altitude can knock your whole expedition. And you think you've been training for 3 years for this, and next minute you have to carry not one of your own guys off, but another guy. But hey, that's life. And Everest is a huge mountain. People say it's a lot. Trust me, I've climbed all over the world, it is not, especially from the north side. And this fixed rope here, this is on the summit ridge, this fixed rope, if you fell on it, you're dead. it would not hold you. So you've got to be a bit of a mountaineer to do these peaks, and the altitude in them is incredible. And unfortunately, the place is littered with fatalities. Now, somebody who spent his life picking fatalities off the hill, to see this, where there's people that has a body lying at 8,000 metres. And you can imagine passing that body to climb. That would be very strange people. And you have not got the energy to rescue people up there. And there was 3 big rescues done by an American group guy called Dave Hand, who was a fantastic mountaineer, American mountaineer, and they gave up the summit attempt to bring Russians down. And that's the difference with some people and some other people, you know. But a lot of people, summit fever, not interested. But incredible. I was very lucky because 2 of my guys, this is Dan Carroll and another guy, Rusty Bale, both summited, and they were both members of my team. So I trained them from the first day out in the team till summit of Everest. And we did it without any instructors, any guides, with the Sherpas who were fantastic. They didn't come to the summit with us. So just a group of guys. And that's great for me, you know. I didn't get anywhere near it. I got up to the North Col, and that's the last one. But these guys summited on the biggest mountain in the world and did a couple of rescues. So we had a great trip. But we hoped to get more than 2 up it, but one of our guys got very ill at high camp, and this is us getting him off. This is Willie. If you notice, Willie's got 2 bags on his back, and he's dragging Jim down. And people walk by him, you know, and he could have died. And 2 people died up at the high camp. You get sick, and you're on your own, and people just walk by. Could you imagine that happening now? And this is a way down here to see that there, that's the North Col. This is up about 27,000 feet, it was 4,000 feet to there. It's incredible. This is the North Col, which is 23,500 feet, huge. And we maybe got 50 tents up there. And you wouldn't believe the mess that people do. Tibet, it's in the news, and I can talk freely now about Tibet. I couldn't believe this, because if you ever want to visit one of the world's beautiful places, please go. This is Batala Palace, which is, wow, what a place. There's 1,000 windows in this place, and it is miles round, and it is a holy place to the Tibetans. And there's people crawl round that, take weeks to do it, part of their religion, the Buddhists, and it is so important to them. And all the pictures and things I'd seen in the paintings was a lake, and I wanted a photo of this beautiful palace shimmering in the lake. And I walked around this, it took me half the day, the guys couldn't believe it. Because this is at 14,000 feet, which is high. So you can fly straight into here before you start on Everest. So you have a couple of days to acclimatise. And I couldn't believe, where is this? And what they'd done, the Chinese, they put a concrete over the lake. Oh. Can you imagine that? One of the most world's, what is that bloody thing? Oh, sorry. What is that thing there? A big fighter. What the blazes has that got to do with the peace-loving nation of the world? Crazy, isn't it? You know, and I saw things in Tibet which horrify you. And the guys who work with us, the yak drivers and all that, will tell you very quickly. So there's lots of things happening in Tibet just now. And life is hard. And the yak guys who helped us move up the mountains, sorry, their children, life is so bare to them that the most important thing, the most important thing for that wee girl is her spoon. That is life to her. And we're up climbing this big mountain, 17,500 feet, and she's up there, and I give her a packet of what they call hard biscuits, and every day, and you can't give everything away because you need stuff yourself, but every day we would give the kids as much as we could. And that packet of biscuits was the world to them. And yet there's all these people going on this expedition to climb Everest. It's quite sad and quite amazing. But again, I mean, we went out and we did it. We got the 2 guys up it, and Rusty was the young lad there, and Dan, the guy on the right, you know, 27-year-old Rusty did Everest. And again, I said he started with me in the hill, so that was great for me. I was very lucky because I stayed on the mountain. We stayed. We were the only party left because the guys were trying to get more guys. After we got our friend down who was ill, we stayed, and winter was coming in. And this is early June. And this doesn't look too bad, but this is up at advanced base at 21,500 feet, higher than McKinley. All the rubbish here, and if you look closely, that's it. All this rubbish was left. And if you look very closely down there, what's that? Coca-Cola tin. 21,500 feet, the most beautiful place in the world, polluted and left by idiots. And we took, because you can get yaks up to that height, we took 50 bag loads of rubbish down. And the Sherpas, you can't burn anything up there because you offend the gods. So, and the Sherpas treat it so reverently, and they were broken hearted and they can't afford to pay to get this down, so we paid and took all the rubbish down. How can you do that to one of the world's most beautiful places? And we brought everything down to these huge things, yachts, incredible. So there's no excuse. We also took a shed out with us. And we were told it would never work, we'd never get a shed, the Chinese would not let us. And the Chinese control the base camp. But we got the shed flown out from the UK, we got given it. And we took loads of whiskey out. Whiskey, even if you're a teetotaler, whiskey is a very good collateral. We had 80 bottles of whiskey, and we're Scottish. And we managed to bribe, unfortunately, the Chinese who let us put our shed up, the first shed that's ever been up there, as long as we put the Chinese flag above everybody else's and gave them a bottle of whiskey. So it was a game, and you have to do that in life, unfortunately. Sometimes you have to bluff it. But this was a great thing. This shed meant when the winds come in and the sand and the dust, we could have a nice, relaxing time. And during some of the tragedies in the mountain, that was used by a lot of people. So it was great. But the great thing at the end of it, we gave it to the village. And this is one of the yak herders who actually summited in Everest here, and we gave it, and they use that as an eye hospital now down the valley a bit. So that was fantastic. And everybody said you'll never get that done, and we did it. And we left nothing. We were the last people here as well. And with the monks in Lhasa, we cleared the whole area, so there was nothing left. But I bet you it's not like that next time if I ever go back out again. How can you do that to one of the world's most beautiful, wonderful places? And you know, people say Everest, you know, but there is so much of it once you get away from it. And I was lucky, I got away around all the other sides, the West Ridge. I got away on my own with the guys up the mountains, and it's just unsurpassable for beauty. This was actually taken in Scotland on a search. So people just don't go missing in bad weather, but sometimes they don't even find them. This was a search for a missing soldier in the Highlands, and that's Scotland in a beautiful morning. It's 7 o'clock, not 5 o'clock, when we woke me up this morning. But it's 7 o'clock in the morning in the search. The mountains, though, and anything in life that's dangerous, unfortunately, things happen. And I've lost about 10 friends climbing. This is the north face of the Matterhorn. One of my best friends was killed in that, and he was solo climbing it as a young lad. So the mountains don't take prisoners. If you muck up and you make a mistake, you've had it. But they're tremendous, and life is an adventure. Life is risk, and I think, especially nowadays, we've got a generation who don't want to go out, don't want to experience, they want to sit and play their games. And I think we must take people out and give them a bit of risk, give them a bit of adventure. Go and find things in life. But unfortunately, these things happen. And you know, one of the things you've got to do, the more you go out, the better you get, and the more improvements you get. And you've got to train in all kinds of weather. You can see he's getting pretty avalanchy here, and the stretcher coming down, training, the dog's running away, he's getting that worried. But you've got to train for serious situations as well. This is rappelling in the yellow sky. But once you do it on a little cliff, you can do it on a big cliff. And things are so safe nowadays, you should, you know, it's incredible. And the ropes are good. In my days, ropes would break when I started climbing. Ropes, equipment's good, and the skills are all there now, and it's very good. And a lot of the young kids become amazing climbers very, very quickly. This is a stretcher lower, and we do quite a bit of training with the stretchers. Not in simple quests like this, but in real situations as well. But we make everything as safe and Nick probably taught you, and it's the same system, isn't it, Nick? You know, we use 3 ropes as a basic, usually, or 2 at least, and you know, more or less the same system as you. But on real rescues, and I've done 1,500-foot lowers, sometimes we've only got 1 rope, and that's where you've got to actually, it's either that or the casualty dies. So sometimes you don't have all this equipment. So sometimes you've actually got to train a wee bit. What have you got? You might be out climbing and somebody falls, and you have to, I've rescued people climbing with just a climbing rope. You have to do it, you can't sit and wait for the cavalry. Because if you wait for the cavalry, the guy's probably going to not make it. But the only way of training, the first time you go over on the stretcher, or even worse if you're the casualty, isn't it? Oh my God, I hate this. But the more you do it, the better you get to it. And you've got to practice it all the time. Again, conditions can be incredible. If you look here, this is that day I showed you the helicopter, and the crampons on the feet in grass, because the ground is so frozen. It's about -20 that day. Look how clean it is. And it looks like there's no snow in these little hills, 3,500 feet, hills called the Moors. But if you hadn't your crampons on, you would never walk in it. And again, walking with crampons, if any of you've done it, it's a different skill. You can't just do it once in a blue moon, you've got to do it regularly. And getting guys used to steep ground, and working in steep situations. And you have to sometimes move on ropes. That's life if you're going to become a mountaineer. And go and do bigger things. This is a route called Fantastic in Skye, which is a fallen arch in the sea. And you don't need mountains to climb, you know, you get sea cliffs, you're climbing all over the place, so the world's your oyster. But winter climbing is where Scotland really excels. And Ben Nevis, our little mountain, is one of the centres of the world. And if you ever take up ice climbing, I've just climbed in Canada this year again, fantastic. But Ben Nevis is amazing. Go and have a look on the web at Ben Nevis and see what they're climbing just now. For Scotland still in winter. This is a route called Albatross, which is grade 7. This is a young lad who was in the team, started off climbing a guy called 2B for someone. We've all got strange names. And he's become a top climber. But it's the mountains and the views of the mountains. And you know, this is an early morning, a little hill up north called Ben Jerry Moor. But what a beautiful mountain. Up in the called the Fisherfield Wilderness. And this is wilderness country in Scotland. And you don't have to be to the top of these hills to enjoy them. Just walking down the glen, it's an early morning, the light. And I mean, you can't, I don't think you can buy that anywhere, a photo like that, and to experience that with a light. Because every day, every minute, it changes, especially when you're near the sea. Talking about the sea, the Isle of Skye, members said, if you ever get a chance to go across, especially if you're in love, what a place to be in love, with a beautiful woman. And Skye is a majestic island. And you go to a place called Lockerbie, which is the back of Skye, and there's a little boat, the Bella Jane, where you can kayak in, because probably you guys do that. Fantastic, and camp in this glen, and it's the most magnificent place in the world. That's just a little part of Scotland. But we have tragedies and accidents, and this is 2 climbers. If you look in there quite closely, there's actually 2 climbers there. And they got caught out all night, and they didn't tell anybody where they were. And one fell, and the other one couldn't get him up, because he hadn't practiced his rope skills, so he couldn't pull him up. And they stayed there for 2 days in pouring wet rain in September. No kit. And unfortunately one was dead, and we couldn't get to them. We couldn't climb above them, we couldn't drop ropes above them, because they were up on this face here. This face is 2,000 feet over there. And you couldn't go from above them, you had to send, and we're on this ledge here, we had to get one guy to climb up to them in crazy conditions. So sometimes you have to really push the steps out, but that other guy would not survive another hour. We got him down and he survived. Sometimes you can have terrible tragedies, but sometimes, again, you know, if you practice it, that guy would never get down without us. And that was all the things they did wrong that day. So you've got to learn from these accidents. But you know, Skye, as I said, is just incredible. An amazing place. Very, very like the Alps, if you ever get a chance to go there. We work very closely with helicopters, but as I said, helicopters are a machine, and they have accidents as well. Can you imagine that? That's that helicopter after it's crashed. So can you imagine conducting a big rescue? The chopper flies past you, saying we need to pick some guys up. There's a woman falling. The next minute, the helicopter hits the mountain, and you know the guys in it, and the local team are in it. So there's 9 people in that helicopter when it crashed into the hill. And that happened there and then as you're there. What do you do as a team leader? What do you do as the man in charge? And they're your people, our friends that you know. And that's where your instant control and running things come in, you know. Things all quick in. And we guys up to that instant in 20 minutes, fit as hell, ran up there, radios. Unfortunately, the local team leader was killed, but the rest got rescued and we saved them. But that could have been such a disaster, it was bad enough. But these helicopters are not infallible, and that was a really good day, but not that good when things like that happen. But this is another side of some of the funnier ones we've done. This is a bull up in a ridge, up at 3,000 feet. We got a phone call from the police saying there's a bull not letting hikers get across a ridge. We thought it was a wind up, put the phone down, and next minute we got flown up to chase this bull down, and that was certainly not an interesting incident. How do you get a bull down that's been scared by a car, run 3,000 feet up the hill, and won't let anybody pass? And of course there's nothing to eat up there, but in the end we got it down. But quite an interesting job. We're doing a train crash. Fortunately, everybody was okay, but we had to move 150 casualties very quickly, some old ladies, off rough ground and up onto the road. So you can do all kinds of things. We do flood relief, all amazing. But everybody's finding that, but middle of nowhere, out in Scotland, get them off quickly. Some of the things you see in some of the places you go, some of the guys have just been to the South Pole and walked the South Pole. So the guys are all over the world and become pretty good in amazing mountaineers. This is an incident that only happened 2 weeks ago. This is a Cessna aircraft you see them flying about. It crashed in the Cairngorms. It just missed the ski resort. They heard it crash, and it took 3 days. This was only last week, 10 days ago, to find. And you try and search for that. That's a plane. So somebody missing in the woods or whatever you're doing, you know, if you're given an area to search, you've really got to search it. And one of the things you've got to do, if you haven't been able to cover it, you've got to come back and tell people we couldn't do it. You've got to be honest in what you're doing because somebody's life could be at stake. But the weather was so bad that the guys missed it. It happened. So that's just a quick, I don't know how the time is, a quick chat about what, you know, a wee bit of what I've been up to, what I've been doing. Lots of things, lots of disasters, lots of fun because I've rescued hundreds of people and lots of good things. But I've told you a lot of the sad ones because, you know, that is life and life's like that. But I've been very lucky because I've had a tremendous life. It's only starting for me now, trust me. But I'm dead lucky because my mum and dad got me into it. I love the mountains. I love the wildlife, you know, the wild place. I love getting out with young people. I love enjoy do it. So if I was you, get out, enjoy these mountains or the wildland and be safe and have fun with mum and dad. Because once you're in a team and you all work together, it's a thing you'll never forget. We have reunions every year, and I'll see guys who maybe only spent 3 years in RAF Mountain Rescue, and it was the highest point of their life, going and finding some old lady or helping somebody, and the life skills they learn is just incredible. And you watch people who are kids to start with become this caring, sharing person. They cope with disasters, they cope with happiness, they cope with sadness, but also cope with life and become really good all-round people. So, is there any questions?
We're going to help Heavy translate here. I see a hand there.
Why do so many planes crash into the mountains of Scotland?
Well, not just the mountains of Scotland. I think if you're probably not very aware, but planes crash all over the place. The crash in Scotland because the weather is so bad, and technology is not. Technology goes wrong, and people are only, and especially light aircraft crash because people cut corners. They don't train. They don't. That guy who, I'm probably speaking out of order here, but he was lost and was way up. He was going to fly across to America, and twice he got lost because you can actually learn to fly a plane quite easily, believe it or not, and then you're on your own. And if you don't have navigation equipment or know how to use it, and if you've ever been in bad weather, it's incredible. You've got no chance. And in conditions like that, you get icing, and you could say, well, why can't you go high? You can't, because if it goes high, his plane lights up, and these little planes don't have the icing. You get these two F-15s that crash. Two of the most technical planes in the world. They still made a mistake. Somebody made a mistake. People make mistakes. There's no person in the world that doesn't make a mistake. And these two pilots flying together hit each other. Happens. Life is not cut and clear.
Next question. Right over there.
Okay?
You said you lost 10 friends. Right?
Yeah.
And you've obviously seen hundreds of dead bodies, and people hurt and mangled. What was your, how did you continue to keep searching? And how did you continue to be part of the RAF after seeing all that?
Because I think when you're a team, and this is what we found before, a thing called post-traumatic stress, you've all heard of this, haven't you? There's lots of it going on, and trust me, in the world we're living in, these guys coming back from Afghanistan and Iraq are seeing things as bad as, without doubt, or even worse. But when you're in a team, you work together and you know each other, and we work and we help each other. And the big thing, everybody handles these things differently, but now we actually talk about it. In Scotland, we never ever show how we feel. I don't know what it's like in America. We don't hug each other. We're quite supposed to be hard and nothing matters. But now we talk a lot more. And you've got to cope with it. How do the guys cope with it on the main roads? They see all the accidents. How do the paramedics cope with it? You do cope with it because you talk about it and you help each other through. And it is amazing it's just amazing how you do cope with it. But trust me, I have nightmares. I mean, I have nightmares after Lockerbie. Because the other thing is, you've got to remember, when you're the team leader, you're supposed to be the man that is instructable, but you're not. You need somebody to talk to. So I've got people I can talk to. And that's a very good question. If you're ever having a hard time and you've seen someone, go talk to somebody. That's what these experts are for. You know, there's a big thing about going and seeing a psychiatrist. Of course not. If your car breaks down, you go take it to garage, don't you? If you have a problem with your head, and that's in anything in life, go talk. People will help you. And trust me, it's not the first time it's ever happened. So there's no problem too great to talk about. Sorry, go on.
Two questions in the back here. First over there, blonde girl. Sorry.
Yeah, I've been avalanched twice. Once when I was very young, in 1972, I went 500 feet, but there was such a thing as avalanches didn't happen in Scotland, it only happened in big mountains. And there wasn't such thing as what we call an avalanche report. So we didn't know anything about it, so we're pretty blasé, if you understand what I mean. But nowadays there's very good information. But if you listen to some of these things, you'd never go and do anything. And as you become more experienced, you also get cocky. In your life, I think you hit peaks. You get scared to begin with, and then you get good, and then you think you're indestructible. You go through an invincible period. And when I thought I was invincible, I went climbing in conditions I shouldn't have done with my brother, and we got spat out a gully, avalanched another 1,000 feet, and after that, I thought, wow, I am being stupid here. So it does happen. But that was my own stupidity. But that's part of life as well. And experience is only gained from all the little epics you've had, really, as well. Because if you never went out and tried it, you would never know. People say you've got to pull the dragon's tail to see what it does at times. And in our job, you have to. Okay? Well, I'm hoping to write a book, but I'm finding it very hard because, as you've seen there's some really hard stories. And I was in Canada and I spent a week writing, and I found it quite hard because it's quite traumatic, and I've lost a lot of friends as well. But it's quite a unique story, and there's lots of good things. I mean, I've looked at that now and going, God, it's all sadness and disasters. But I think because Lockerbie, because you're an American audience, I had to tell you these stories. And I think people should know these things, that man can do it. And I think there's a story to tell, because I didn't tell you at Lockerbie, some of the greatest things were the local people. The minute we set up to start searching, the local people were there, took over a school, had a kitchen up, and when we came back, there was meals ready for us. People were fantastic in the world, you know. So there's a story to tell about how good people are in this crazy world. So I'd like to tell it. Yes?
Earlier, you before you started your speech, you made a comment about your vest, and I was wondering if that is any particular tartan if that stands for something.
Mick will tell you.
Tartan is invented by the Victorians as a tourist attraction. It's Royal Stewart.
Royal Stewart.
Tartan is not real, and most Scots know that these days.
If you were a true Scot, you know that, Ducky.
What was that?
Where did you come from, Peter?
Peter was...
All right.
More questions for Heather. Come on, you guys are burning to ask questions.
I think we've done very well, Matt.
So, Mick, when are we going out with Heavy to do some of this stuff?
Well, I'm thinking about setting something up.
Okay.
We have a whole, the search and rescue team has a whole training the weekend after next. And if you signed up for it, Abby's coming with.
I'd love to see you.
We're going to Scooter to be with the Maine Search and Rescue Association for the weekend. All right, one last question. Who's going to go? There you go.
What were you said you couldn't talk about certain things before. What can you now talk about, or what one thing can you now say that you couldn't say before you retired?
I couldn't say that when we went to Lockerbie, we knew straight away that it was a bomb. the minute I got there, and I gave a brief to the police, there was special, there was Americans there, there was Israeli Secret Service there, as quick as we got there. So it was known something was going to happen. And that's true. So the world is quite corrupt, I think, because somebody knew something at that time. Somebody knew something was going to happen, because and lots of people died. But there's other stories as well that people get taken off at that point, and yet all these poor students died and people went on holidays. So I think sometimes it's, I don't know why, there's something going on there, without a doubt. Strange world.
Chris, did you want to say a bit?
Yeah, for people who are in the class, we're going to be meeting downstairs. Dr. Silver, you're welcome to join us.
Thank you very much.
Okay, well, thanks for coming.
The thrill is gone. The thrill is gone away. The thrill is gone. The thrill is gone away. You know you've done me wrong, and you'll be sorry someday.